Okay, recording is started. So, hello everybody. It is wonderful to see you, and I know some of you are just dialing in to listen in. That's also fine. Today, as you know, we have the great pleasure to talk to Adam Kahane, and I will introduce Adam in a moment. But just so you know, as usual, I will pin Adam and myself to start with. And then after a while, I will unpin us and we will open the room for all of you and any questions that you might bring. So let me add my pin video here. Adam, it is so wonderful that you are here with us today. Thank you for agreeing. And actually, the way this happened, Adam has been a hero of mine for a while. He has written a number of really fascinating, insightful, and helpful books. And a while ago, you reached out on LinkedIn and just said that you liked the article that I once wrote on Source. And I thought, oh, this is an amazing opportunity to grab in and see if I can get you to be my interview guest. So let me say a few words about you, Adam. I'm going to keep this short because people can read up on you, but you are the co-founder of Rios Partners, and Rios Partners is an international social enterprise that helps people move forward together on their most important and intractable issues. And you're a leading organizer, designer, and facilitator of processes through which businesses, but also governments and civil society leaders can work together to address such important challenges and disagreements. And as I mentioned, you're also the author of a number of books, amongst them Solving Tough Problems, Power and Love, and of course, Collaborating with the Enemy. And I just heard that there is a new edition of Collaborating with the Enemy, so I'm looking forward to hearing more. So, Adam, as we get started, I don't know how many people might have read your book when it first came out in 2017, but I would love for you to give us just a sort of brief download. What is this book about, and how has it evolved for you since you first published it?
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation. And I did very much like the article you wrote on Source. So I'm pleased it connected us.
Hmm.
And um, I wrote the book Collaborating with the Enemy in 2017. And I didn't think it was my best book, but it was my best title. And it's done very well and has been published in many languages, many more than my other books. But I just didn't want to forget to say that I'm thrilled that for the first time it will come out in German. In fact, I think it's coming out maybe next month in German.
Amazing.
Um,
Okay.
and I'm saying that just because I'm an author and translations into German are actually rather rare. I don't know why, but
Because German is a very complicated language.
well, I think also maybe the more charitable explanation is many German people read English. But anyway, I'm very happy that it's coming out in German, which I think is next month. So, as I said, um, uh, the book has done well, and therefore my publisher asked me to prepare a second edition, which I've never done before. Uh, um, in general, you make second editions of books that are doing well. I said, what about a second edition of Power and Love, which is one of my earlier books, which I like very much, and they said no. Everybody's forgotten about that book. Forget about it. Anyway, so that's how the that's how the publishing business works. And I accepted on the condition that I could make as many changes as I wanted, because um, there were things that I just wasn't happy with. I would say aesthetically, the way the book argument was structured, and also I had the sense that in the period since the book was published, that the world has caught up with the book in a way. And the sentence which I use, I think, in the first edition, and again, is that collaboration across difference is becoming more important and more difficult. And that seems even more true now than when I started, which was in August 2024. So, so I'll answer your question now, which is the book is actually expanded in that it now includes exercises at the end of each chapter, but more fundamentally, the several um, fundamental ideas have been revised. So the book asks the question, how can we collaborate across difference? And um, uh, when I started to rewrite the book, I had the great pleasure of having a academic fellowship. I'm not an academic. I haven't been in an academic institution since I was a university student, but
Mm.
I somehow was invited to do a writing fellowship at the Paris Institute for Advanced Study, which was thrilling. And I had to present my project at the beginning of my stay. And I did, and I told the other fellows, who are all European academics, that um, I was here to work on revising a text called Collaborating with the Enemy, How to Work with People You Don't Agree With or Like or Trust, which is the original title and still the same title. And one of the fellows there, a Romanian urban historian, said, Adam, your subtitle suggests that you consider this to be a very extraordinary thing.
Mm.
And I thought it was a very perceptive observation, because he was exactly right. We chose the subtitle because, and I think the book has done very well, because people think, how could we possibly work with people we don't agree with or like or trust? But Groya, that's his name, Groya Badescu, Groya's point with Adam, he said, from the perspective of an urban historian, this is the very definition of a city.
Mm.
And I thought it was such a helpful comment, because what I've come to understand even more since the book was published last November, or the new edition was published last November, is this idea that we can't work with people who are different from us, uh, is that it takes some extraordinary, you'd have to have some advanced textbook by some genius facilitator, is completely incorrect.
Mm.
And it's even a new idea, not an old idea. And we were, of course, both in Paris when he said this to me. And as I took the bus home that evening, I realized, well, actually, probably most of the people here, well, most of the people here I don't know. And if I did know them, there'd be many of them I wouldn't agree with or like or trust. But we do manage to live together with, not perfectly, not all the time, but it does work to a great extent. So the more recent thought I have about it is that somehow this idea that I was just on another call and somebody said, we who are the pioneers of working together across difference. And I said, you're not, this group is not at all the pioneers. This is something people have always known how to do, but for some reason have come to believe it's more and more difficult. And I think in a way that I never expected, the COVID retreat has contributed to that. It's not the only factor or even the major factor, but this idea that we can choose who we're in community with. We can choose that our community is the people who come to these Zoom calls rather than the people who live next to us or the people in our office or the people we meet on the bus. I think it was Judith Butler who wrote somewhere, that I was rereading it yesterday, I insist on the unchosen nature of community. And that's what I think we've lost.
Yeah.
So that's one of the one of the changes. The second change, just to go quickly, and then we can take it wherever you want, is that in the first edition, the word enemy was just in the title. The book sort of says, well, that's just a big misunderstanding. It's just people you have differences with. And when I published that, one of my colleagues, who some of you may know, Zaid Hassan, wrote to me and said, Adam, it's really a terrible title for the book. You risk being understood as crypto-Schmittist. And well, Zaid and I used to argue about a lot of things, so I ignored him. But when I was rewriting it, I went back to that email and I realized exactly correct. Crypto-Schmittist refers to Carl Schmitt, the German political scientist and legal scholar, who was a member of the Nazi Party, and who's famously wrote that politics is all about friends and enemies, that there's two groups of people.
Mm-hmm.
And Zaid was pointing out that it's very dangerous to take this point of view that either you're a friend or an enemy. And so the second big change in the book is to say, well, I mean, we do have enemies. I finally looked it up in the dictionary. What's an enemy? An enemy is somebody who's trying to hurt or injure you. Well, there are people who are trying to injure some people some of the time. Dropping bombs on people is, I think, constitutes being an enemy. To take this week's one of this week's many examples. Um, but there's two problems. Firstly, we use this word enemy now very broadly and thinly, not just for people who are really trying to harm or injure us, but for people who are offending us or we don't like or we disagree with or who look at us funny on the street. Um, and secondly, we make the Schmittist mistake of thinking we can only work with our friends and never with our enemies. And that might be nice, but sometimes we don't need to work with our friends, and the people we really do need to work with are our enemies. So that's the second big change, is to take the idea of enemy seriously. The third big change is I have for a long time been trying to unpack this triad of love, power, and justice in several of my last books, and I've now argued that collaborating cross difference requires employing power and love and justice. And I'm working on a new book right now, specifically on that theme. First sentence of which is, "Our worlds are falling apart," and asking how justice plays into that. I'm saying these things quickly just because I'm sure they'll provoke questions from you and others. And the final major change in the book is that in the first edition, I said there's a conventional way of collaborating, which to get to the essence involves the collaborators subordinating themselves to the collaboration, being good team players.
Mm-hmm.
And I said in the first edition, this is becoming obsolete. And I think this is completely, I now realize this is a completely incorrect statement. There's many, many examples of teams, whether they're sports teams or orchestras or surgical teams or teams and organizations, where you either fit in and do your job or you leave. You subordinate we want you for the contribution you can make, but you have to put your contribution at the service of the work of the team. And that's what I call conventional collaboration. It works with power, love, and justice in a particular way. And it works perfectly well in situations which are low complexity and low conflict. But in situations which are high complexity and or high conflict, conventional collaboration doesn't work. A different kind of collaboration is required, which I call stretch collaboration. So there I've saved you whatever it is, 22 euros and having to read the book
Well,
and the
I'm,
German.
judging by the first edition, Adam, I would say it's still probably very much worth 22 euros to read. Also on your fascinating body of work, because of course you don't talk about this as a person who has a theory about collaboration in these spaces, but as somebody who's actually been to some of the most tense and distraught situations on the planet, and maybe that would help to frame this a bit for people listening now. Can you give us an example of a place where you say this
No.
was, a moment where people were literally at each other's throats or did see each other as existential threats, and you helped them to move into the space of stretch collaboration?
Uh, well, I'll give maybe not the most dramatic example, but the first example, because I'm right now in outside Cape Town in South Africa. That's why, that's why the light is fading. It's the end of the day. And I'm here because in 1991, I came here to facilitate a process which became known as the Montfleur scenario exercise. And I became very interested in this work of collaborating across difference. And I became very interested in South Africa. And I became very interested in the woman who was the organizer of the project. And so in 1993, I quit my job at Shell in London and emigrated to South Africa and married the project organizer. So altogether a successful project. Um, and um, I I refer still to the South African example, uh, well, because that's where I think I saw the possibility that I've been working towards ever since. I once used the image of it's like it's a dark night and there's a flash of lightning and you can see everything but just for a second and then it's dark again. So I could see everything briefly, and then it took me many years to understand what I'd seen and what it takes to do it. But what I saw in essence was people who had been separated and in conflict. Remember, the word apartheid, it just means apartness.
Mhm.
It was a theory, an evil theory, but a theory about how to live together, which involved separating people physically, socially, economically, by citizenship, etc., which was coming to an end by the time I arrived in 1991. But the question was, what can we replace it with? The first Nelson Mandela had been released from prison 1 year before, but the first democratic elections were not until 1994. So it was right in the middle of the interregnum. Maybe we're in another interregnum now globally. I don't know. Maybe not. We're in the middle of something. I can't see what it is. Um, but what I learned there is it is possible for people who have been separated uh, by the brutal use of power to reunite, which they did in this project, which involved black and white people, men and women, opposition and establishment, left and right, politicians, business people, trade unionists, academics, community activists. And they worked together very well and did remarkable work and made some contribution to the transition. So this was very inspiring to me that it is possible for people that don't agree with or like or trust each other to work together productively, joyfully, creatively, and that's what I've been doing ever since. Um, yeah.
So, I'm curious. This is of course, a very particular situation where I can only imagine how many emotions must have been in such a room, right? When so much injustice has been predominantly, um, yeah, been done to one group of people by another group of people who had the power at the time. How do you act in situations like that where this kind of injustice was present without, but maintaining a dialogue without normalizing the violence or yeah, excusing the violence that has happened or asking people to betray their core values? How do you go about that?
Okay. Well, there's a lot to say about that. So, firstly, as you know, I think it's true in German as well as English and especially French. The word collaboration has two opposite meanings. I'm not sure in German, but in French it's
Yeah,
very strong. Collaboration means to work together with, and it also means to betray.
yeah.
And in Paris, people just the top of their head came off. They said we cannot publish this book in French called Collaborating with Enemy because to be a collabo is a specific reference to collaborators with the Nazis in the Second World War. So I emphasize this double meaning because I think this is not a side issue. This is the central issue that we think we need to work with these people in order to do what we're trying to do, and yet we worry that doing so requires us to betray our comrades or our values or whatever. So I guess maybe the most sorry, there's so much I want to say about this. Let me just make a note because I don't want to forget. Um, uh, Let me just skip ahead to say that collaborating cross difference is difficult, very difficult. But if we say that in order to collaborate across difference, we must agree with and like and trust the other people, We must have the same understanding of the problem, the solution, the plan, and the same values. Then we make something difficult impossible. And I'm saying that's in this well-rehearsed way because I find people ask me the question the way you did very frequently. What about if they have different values? Well, um, sorry, let me back up and then I'll come to the question you asked. When I started work on the second edition, I put on LinkedIn for people who've read the first edition, is there anything that you think I should keep or change in the second edition? And a number of people wrote me something I thought was very funny. They said, actually, I didn't make it very far in the book, but the chart on page 4, that's a good chart. Don't forget that, which I thought was pretty funny. They're right. It is a very good chart, and I did keep it. And the chart on page 4, I don't think it's page 4 anymore, says that collaboration is not the only option. It's literally impossible to collaborate with everybody on everything. We always have a choice among 4 options. We're faced with a situation we don't like. We can try to force it to be the way we think it ought to be, regardless of what other people want. We can adapt to it as it is, live with it. We can exit from it, quit our job, get a divorce, emigrate, tune out, or we can try to collaborate. So I'm not saying that we have to collaborate with everybody on everything. It's impossible and undesirable. But the book is about, in those cases where we want to work with others, including others who are different from us, how do we do so? Okay. To go back to your question, so there are 2 things about that first situation that I think would surprise you. The first is this was my first experience facilitating in such a context. I was working in Shell in the corporate planning department, and I'm a very heady person. And I think I was successful because I really wasn't aware of the emotions in the room. Somebody said to me, they said, Adam, when we first met you, we couldn't believe that anybody could be so ignorant about the South African situation. We were certain you were trying to manipulate us. And then when we realized you actually didn't know anything, that's when we trusted you. So to a limited extent, I don't want to exaggerate this, that it helps if there's somebody in the room who's not all caught up in, oh, this is just so terrible, and they did this to you and you did this to them, and oh, let's have a cry now. I didn't do that at all. I was a corporate scenario facilitator, and people loved it. And it turned out that telling stories about what the essence of the method we were using at the time, the Shell scenario method, is telling stories about what could happen, not what you want to happen, not what you predict to happen. And this was hugely liberating, uh, especially for these political people who were used to only talking about what they wanted. To talk about what was possible and what was impossible led to major changes. The Pan Africanist Congress suspending the armed struggle, the African National Congress changing its approach to economic reform, many things like this. So, so that's one thing. The second thing was, for whatever reason, this wasn't the mood. The mood in the room wasn't, at least I think, to the extent I'm able to recall, was not as you suggested. Everybody knew change was coming in South Africa, and the energy was, let's not screw this up. Let's find a way to make it work. So between the method, which was let's talk about what's possible, not what you want, and the mood, which was let's not lose this opportunity, and the sense that we have been separated. The group that was together at the Montfleur Conference Center would literally not have been legally allowed to be together previously, because apartheid, among other things, kept blacks and whites, especially in settings in the wine country, physically separated. So the idea we would all be staying at the same small hotel, having wine with dinner together, was very jovial. And I think this is what people who come to South Africa from, for example, the United States or maybe Germany, I don't know, they say, boy, people here seem to have a, so it's a different way of getting along. Yes, terrible things have happened, are happened, abuse of power, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but also some different way of relating to each other that I wouldn't want to trivialize or glamorize, but it's different cultures have different ways of dealing with these issues, and they're not all the same as North Americans and North Europeans.
For sure. For sure. So it sounds to me with what you're describing that in part of your role is actually to, I don't know, to open up a potentiality, right? To just point that there might be a different multiverse in which we can enter if we so choose to. Does that somehow describe what you feel you're
Yes.
bringing to your room?
No, exactly. In fact, the more I'm keep trying to get to what's the essence of the work after a long time and a lot of writing. And my editor is always saying, "What's the bedrock, Adam? What's the bedrock? You have to get to the fundamental idea." Which is good advice for writing such books. And I think the bedrock, at least in the aspect you're talking about, is we have differences, big differences, permanent differences. We have commonalities also, but we have differences. And the normal approach, which is let me try to change you so you're the way I want you to be, uh, which many of us do, which I do, literally every day, is not very. It doesn't help very much. I have 4 children and 10 grandchildren. Let me tell you, it doesn't work very often. So the alternative is to say, okay, this is what these people are doing. They have their reasons to. I probably can't change them. Maybe they'll shift it a little bit, but this is the what I'm dealing with here. I might like it, I might not like it, I might wish it was different, but this is what I'm dealing with here. How can we find a way forward? How can we live together, in spite of our differences? And so, yes, I think it's about discovering new options, discovering new possible scenarios, and discovering new options for action. That is what I think the bedrock is. I've worked a lot in Colombia, a little bit for a long time, and I worked a lot with a man named Juan Manuel Santos, who won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2016, and we'd worked together 20 years before on a small project like the South African one, but in Colombia, more dramatic because it involved all the combating parties from the left and right and the military. Um, and I was very surprised that the day he won the Nobel Peace Prize, he referred to the work we'd done 20 years before, which of course I was thrilled about, but I didn't understand why. And a few months later, I was in Bogota and I asked him, why do you keep referring to these workshops 20 years ago? So much bigger things had happened. Including he had been Minister of Defense and had tried to erase the guerrillas, had tried very hard to pacify the country. And he said, the reason I keep referring to Destino Colombia is that's where I first understood that contrary to all of my cultural and family and political upbringing, it is possible to work with people you do not agree with and will never agree with. And I found this stunning because many people believe, well, we're going to get together, we're going to have a drink, we're going to have a dialogue, we're going to find, oh, there's all the terrible misunderstanding. We actually agree, want the same thing. Well, we might, but we might not. And the example he gave was amazing. The example was him and Hugo Chavez, who at that time was the president of Colombia. Hugo Chavez and Santos were opposites. Chavez was a revolutionary Bolivarian socialist, and Santos was a neoliberal democratic capitalist. It was obvious they would never agree. It wasn't even worth talking about. But there were things they had to do together. They were presidents of neighboring countries. There were things they needed to do together. They did do together. So yeah, sorry, I don't remember what the question was.
Well, but this is interesting. I mean, what is then the process, right? So you have two people who are realizing we may never actually agree on anything in particular, and we have to collaborate. So what now?
Well, I'll answer it in a few ways because I don't think there's a simple recipe. But I'll give you two kinds of answers. Uh, The process answer is we talk about the current situation, things as they are now, and we talk about what could happen. That's the scenario part of it. And we try to, maybe we won't agree on whether we like it or don't like it, or on what's preferable, or on whose fault it is, but we sort of understand each other about what we're each talking about and about how to understand what is going on, what has gone on, what could go on. And out of that, we might discover, well, we'll all be better informed. We'll see things we weren't seeing before. That's why it's very exciting if you're able to create a space where people can work with people who they thought of as their enemies. It's often a life-changing experience. I never thought I'd be able to be in a room with somebody like that, let alone have a productive and important conversation. Um, and out of that, coming back to the way we were talking about it, again, we will discover, oh, okay, I see, yes. So there's some things I can do, and there's some things you can do, and maybe there's this little thing we can do together. Maybe we want to do it for different reasons, but we both agree this is worth trying. We don't know if it'll work, and let's try it and see. And that's how trust and relationships are built. So
Mm.
that I'm simplifying something that's not really simple, but that
But
would be
what
one
I'm
way of
hearing here,
explaining it.
there's sort of a preference for movement, right? For putting things into
Yes,
action rather than finding the perfect
yes,
agreement on something.
absolutely.
Mm.
Yes, no, that's very important. That's something I learned early on, that what's key in these processes is not to agree, is you don't need to agree at every step to be able to move to the next step. That's a fatal assumption. Um, what we need to do is keep moving, because maybe the thing that we disagree about violently, maybe we don't disagree about it, or maybe it's actually not the main thing. Oftentimes, this thing that we thought was the main thing that we absolutely had to agree is there, but it's actually not the thing we need to be talking about here. So had we insisted that until we agreed on that we couldn't move on, we wouldn't have gotten anywhere. So that's part of it. And the other part of it is, in most of these situations, we can't know what will work. It's no use trying to agree the perfect answer, because actually it's just a theory.
Mm.
We can only know if something works by trying it and seeing. So yes, the preference is very much, or the emphasis is on, let's keep moving, let's try stuff, let's see what's possible here, let's see what we can build, let's see if we can build a relationship of at least mutual understanding and respect, even if not agreement. I've been working with a group in Mexico for over 10 years now. They do a lot together. They don't agree any more than they did 10 years ago. They still disagree about all the same things, but they're able to do lots of things together. It's very interesting.
So I'm just noticing the time because I have a million more questions I want to ask you, but I'd also love to open up to the room and see what is coming up to people. Just, one sort of anecdotal side note, Adam, when I was telling my wife yesterday that I was going to interview you, she said, so his name is Adam Kahane, and he wrote a book, Collaborating with the Enemy. And she said, that's an unfortunate name. And I said, what do you mean? Like the title of the book? And she's like, no, his last name. And then she informed me about the
Yes.
Kahanists,
Yes.
right? And I had no idea about what this group of people wants, or what they stand for, and read up on it since, and thought in a way it's also a wonderful rebranding of what being a Kahanist might mean in the future. And yeah, because you take such a different stance in this matter.
Well, seeing as you brought it up, I'll defend my name. The name Kahane, as your wife probably knows, is just one of the many spellings of not a family name, but a tribal name. The more common spelling is Cohen.
Mm.
Most people from this tribe are named Cohen. There are a few people named Kahane, of which one was a famous radical rabbi named, don't remember his first name. But yes, but the so I don't think much about that. In fact, nobody's even made the connection before. But I do think about what it means to be from the tribe of Aaron.
Mhm.
So the Kahanes or the Cohens are the descendants of Aaron, Moses' brother, and my middle name is Moses. So I I'm I do wonder what it means to carry the name Adam Moses from the tribe of priests.
Oh, that's
That's for
good.
me more interesting than
Yes.
one of my relatives.
One of your relatives. Okay, let me unpin myself. So everybody, you can already begin to think about what it is that you would like to ask. And think we had, Manuel, you had a question in the chat, but would you be willing to talk to us directly?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Adam. Fascinating insights you're giving us, and I ordered the book while you were talking, so yeah, there's at least some royalties coming in. Anyway, I didn't mean to brag about this. So I kept thinking about what about family systems? You know, there's so much distrust and so much, or there can be so much distrust and disagreements and people we don't actually like within family systems. Do you think we can move beyond that? I'm just thinking there's so much history behind families. Is it maybe easier or is it harder to move beyond that?
Yeah, sorry, I was distracted. I'm going to answer your question, but I'll just put what I'm not able to put in the chat. Oh, yes, there it is. I just wanted to, you reminded me to post that. Yes, it's a great question. Thank you, Manuel. I have a lot of problems in my family, uh, very ordinary problems. I have a big family and lots of differences and lots of disagreements and lots of feuds and separating and coming together. So I think it's a very relevant example. Um, I I don't know whether it's harder or easier, um, but I think it's relevant. Um, and uh, More generally, I think this whole matter of kinship, of understanding people as relatives. We might like them, we might not like them, we might want to be with them, we might not want to be with them, but we are related to each other, is a very fundamental matter. Uh, and I think the worst problems are when we see others not as kin, maybe not even as fully human, and therefore we can just dispose of them uh, as if they're vermin. Take the obvious reference. So I don't know. What do you think?
I love the quote you gave from Judith Butler. I'm not sure I can piece it together in my mind, but something about communities unchosen.
Yeah,
And I think what you're saying also speaks to me in a similar way. I think you're saying it's kin, and I mean, we don't choose the people. Um,
yeah,
and actually, I'm very easy to dismiss people in my mind. I'm not proud of it, but that's how I
yeah,
learned to deal with problems. And yeah, maybe it's a matter of looking at unchosen community. Actually, it gives me a lot
yeah,
of soul searching.
yeah,
Thanks for that, Adam. That really was
yeah.
helpful.
Adam, actually, I have a follow-up question to something that you started out at the very beginning of the conversation. You said part of the appeal that you also had to some of the more difficult situations you entered was sort of your lack of awareness around social emotional clues, right? And your lack of diving deep into understanding the emotional reactions. And I'm wondering, what is your take on that today? Did that cement itself as a viable approach? Do you think we overemphasize on sort of trying to understand our emotions, or has that shifted for you in any way?
Well, I think I've grown up a little bit in 35 years, including 35 years of marriage. So um, I think I would put it another way. I think what we overemphasize is the idea that we have to resolve everything before we continue. For example, to take it from another angle, I'm Canadian, and the joke people make about Canadians is they're very polite. And I used to think this was a great failing, that people would be polite and pretend they agreed even if they didn't agree. But I now understand it as a functional activity. I mean, it has its risks, but it's also functional. This allows us. This is one of the ways. It's not the only way, but it's one of the ways to live with difference. And uh, uh, I said that I had a second way of explaining this question of how to do the work, which I've been working with today. So I just want to say it briefly because I'm curious how it resonates with you. It's an image I'm playing with in the conclusion of the new book. Do you know what kintsugi is?
Mm-hmm.
Kintsugi is it's a Japanese way of repairing broken pottery. And the reason it's very famous is it reassembles the pieces of the pottery, but not invisibly, but visibly. And it uses gold lacquer on the cracks. Kin means gold. The word kin means gold. Is that kintsugi?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't see.
This
Yeah.
this statue fell, and then I glued it back together.
Oh, okay.
And it's
Great.
from
Yes.
Canada.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yes. So I've been thinking about this metaphor. So I'm playing with this metaphor in the following, that the first step is to look at the pieces as they are. Some of them are ugly and crooked or or sharp or harsh, but it doesn't do any good to wish that they were something else. This is what we have. We have some pieces. And so this has to do with recognizing, yeah, I won't, you can make the analogy in your mind. So seeing the pieces as they are. And secondly, recognizing that they could be more than the sum of their parts. A vase is more than the sum of a bunch of broken pieces. And then, but thirdly, and this is what's distinctive about kintsugi, is focusing on the joints, on the brokenness, on the history, on the imperfections. So I've been playing with this, which corresponds in a way I won't go into power, love, and justice as power, a whole in itself, love, the interrelationship between the parts, and justice, the nature of the relationships between the parts. So, yeah.
Thank you. I think it's a wonderful metaphor for what is, what we need to do in these situations. Peter, you have a question for Adam. Could you ask that directly?
Hello, Peter.
Hey, Adam. Good
Nice to see you live.
Yeah, I was actually listening to you while driving, which I shouldn't be doing. But so there's a little bit of remorse there. That's why I put it into the chat. A question to start off with, because I'm curious, because I know that you've been doing a lot of work in Central America. Are you familiar with the Nagual or the Nawal? Nagual?
No.
Okay. So the thing is, you mentioned that when you get people who consider themselves enemies into a room, you go into a discovery process. So that would indicate that you're actually looking for something that is there that hasn't been discovered yet. And I was thinking about whether what has not yet been discovered, maybe that can contribute to collaboration, even if it stays where it is, undiscovered. I was just wondering whether you could jump in on that thought in any way. Thank you.
Let me not try to pretend to understand something I don't. So it sounds interesting, but I'd love to correspond about it, but I don't have a thought about it.
If I may jump in there, so Peter, in a way, I think what you were speaking to was the potentiality that I brought in earlier, where you basically open up a space to see a potential that hasn't been realized yet, right? And in a way, maybe it's the kintsugi metaphor as well, right? Where something that didn't exist before, because this is new, right? It's not the old shape. It is a third. It's something that is discovered in the process of making it, essentially. And maybe that's, Peter, what you were referring to, sort of you don't know what the outcome is going to be because you haven't realized this potential yet.
But I think this, I'm not sure this is what you're emphasizing, Peter, but of course, the exciting thing about working in an extremely diverse group, especially people that you're not used to talking with, is of course, everybody can see much more than they were seeing before, and you can create things that would not have been possible before, including scenarios and possibilities and alliances and commitments and relationships. And it's very dramatic in cases where these are not the usual suspects.
What else is coming up in terms of questions from the room? I'm wondering. Adam, as people are maybe collecting themselves.
There's
actually, yes.
Oscar.
Yes, go ahead, Oscar.
Hi, thank you. Adam, I was wondering, well, I actually have two questions, but I'll pick one, so hopefully everyone has space. Particularly if it's a collaboration building work between two or more than two conflicting groups, like historically conflicting and maybe still going on or maybe not anymore, but particularly if both sides are still carrying a lot of impacts from the actions and choices of the other part. How much to, in your work, how much to address and acknowledge and recognize the impact? So it might be then maybe a process of reconciliation, forgiveness, I don't know, healing. How much work is needed for that? Or in the way you practice your work? How much significance and importance you see on that part?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Oscar. Let me say two things. Firstly, of course, there's many ways to approach such situations, including processes of directly working on healing and reconciliation. And I'm not very experienced in these, but as you know, there was a famous example in South Africa of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, also in Guatemala and Canada, many other places. And I value that. I value and respect that work. And the second thing to say is, of course, in many situations, people don't want to work with those they consider their enemies. I think when this book first came out, somebody invited me, some Canadian diplomat organized a seminar for me at the UN. I wonder if I've got my years right, but I remember there was a Ukrainian man in the audience, and he was just apoplectic that anybody would suggest that Ukrainians should collaborate with Russians. I wasn't telling him what to do, and as I tried to emphasize half an hour ago, it's not the only option. You can try to force, adapt, exit. There are many situations where collaborating across difference is not possible, including among other reasons, because the people you think you want to collaborate, you need to collaborate with, think they're winning and don't have any interest in collaborating with you, of which there are many current examples. All that said, for better or worse, my own approach, and here I'm not sure I'm speaking for Rio's partners as a whole, as I suspect that some of my partners would disagree with what I'm about to say. But my own approach has not been to try to directly approach healing and reconciliation. Although often healing and reconciliation and trust are a consequence of working together in I could say, a practical or pragmatic way. And there's many examples from these processes about people continuing to work together for years and decades because of the relationships they've formed, notwithstanding their continued differences. But I wouldn't say, at least the way I personally have approached this work, that it emphasizes reconciliation. Let me illustrate this with an example, which might give you a bit the spirit of what I've been involved in. One of the things I've done for 30 years in workshops is the following very simple thing. We're working together in a group of people who have many disagreements, and we've been working together for a while. And I say, well, we have an hour until lunch. Why don't you look around the room, find the person who you think is most different from you, and go for a walk with them. And we'll see you all after lunch. And saying it that way, a little playfully, invites people often to lock eyes with somebody they really, really, really didn't think they could talk to, and they go for a walk and everybody else is going, oh my God, did you see those two people who went off together? Something terrible is going to happen. And people love this exercise. They say, man, these dialogues, these used to Post-its and flip charts and Lego, it's okay, but the walk is really good. Can we do more of the walk? So I started to wonder, what's with the walk? Why do people like the walk so much? And of course, there's a mechanical reason for it, that you're not on your phone, you're not looking at your paper, you're literally looking in the same direction. You're moving through the world, you're encountering choices and obstacles. But that's not the real reason. And there's a Catholic theologian in Mexico who had done this, and she said, Adam, I think the key thing about the walk is the sequence. She said, in the walk, first you are connecting as human beings, walking, talking about family or what an irritating facilitator this is, or the weather or whatever. And then second, maybe you will choose to think differently or relate differently or act differently. She said, Adam, this is the opposite of the Catholic confessional, where first you have to admit you're wrong, and then you're readmitted to the communion. And I thought this was a very profound thing. So the spirit I'm trying to convey is, what I'm trying to do is create opportunities for people to connect relationally, intellectually, practically. Some of them do, some of them don't. Much of it takes place outside the workshop, on walks or meals or in the bar. Some people will never change anything. Some people will become lifelong allies. Some new ideas will arise. Some people will be changed fundamentally. Some people will not change their mind, but will do different things because they see different opportunities. And so I'm much more, I guess I would say I'm more modest about what I do versus what the space enables to happen for people to choose to do in the space.
That's good. Does that answer your question? You're welcome to ask a second question. We still have a few minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, it does. It does. It does, definitely. Of course, lots of thoughts coming. I was also wondering, and it's connected to this actually, during your work, also, have you noticed anything or more than one thing that could almost like what they say, like a silver lining, like there's this, in the framework of nonviolent communication, like there's the idea of, okay, on the level of needs, there's no conflict. On the level of strategies to meet those needs, yes, this is where the conflicts happen, which makes perfect sense. Like, does that more or less, does this match with your experience, either specifically about needs? Like, is this how your experience is also, or maybe there's something else? So like when you enable space to accommodate and nourish connection, what comes out? Is there something common?
So I have a lot of respect for Marshall Rosenberg and nonviolent communication. I think it's a wonderful approach, which fits very well with what I'm doing, although I wouldn't say I'm an expert in it, and I don't really have an opinion on this specific point. But I will offer something related, which is the silver thread that I'm following in my last books, and particularly in the book I'm writing now. There's a man that you've probably not heard of, but he's well known in Colombia. His name is Pacho Duru. He's a Jesuit priest. For a while, he was the head of the Jesuits in Colombia, but before he was head of the Jesuits, he was a well-known peacemaker. Francisco Duru is his full name. And I've met him from time to time as I've worked in Colombia. He's a very nice man. And after the signing of the peace accords in 2017, I think it was, he was appointed to head the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in Colombia by Santos. Actually, it's called the Commission for Truth, Reconciliation, and Non-Repetition. Very nice title. And I heard he had been appointed. It's of course a very big appointment opportunity. It was called for in the peace accords, and I was running a workshop in a particular part of a province of Colombia. And I was very surprised he was there, because I thought, he's just started this new job. Why is he at this local workshop? And he said, "Oh, well, I'm interested in your method. I thought it might help me, so I'm here to participate." And so the workshop started, and it was going quite well. It was the same sort of thing as all my other workshops, very diverse people from this particular part of Colombia, which had been a site of a lot of violence, people, former guerrillas and politicians and business people and Afro-Colombians and indigenous Colombians. And it was going quite well. And at the end of the first day, we're breaking for dinner, and Pacho comes running up to me and he says, "Adam, I see what you're doing." And I say, well, Pacho, what am I doing? He says, "Adam, you're removing the obstacles to the expression of the mystery." So I sat with him for dinner, and my Spanish is not very good, and his English is not very good. And I must admit, after a 2-hour dinner, I wasn't very clear on what the mystery is. Of course, for a Jesuit to talk about the mystery doesn't mean like Agatha Christie mystery. It means something not knowable. But I thought it was very interesting, his phrase, "the obstacles to the expression of the mystery." That seemed to me like a very pragmatic thing. And that is the incident that provoked my book, Facilitating Breakthrough, where I first started on this thread of power, love, and justice. And the way I've taken it is, what are you doing here? Everybody in their own way is trying to express connection and contribution, love and power. And the key, as I would now formulate it, I said it differently in that book, the key is justice. That is what removes the obstacles to the expression of the mystery, the expression of the mystery being power and love. Thank you for asking, because I hadn't seen it. I wasn't able to formulate it as clearly, so I better write it down, because I'm going to forget it in 1 minute, and it's a good one.
That's a beautiful question. Thank you, Özge. But Adam, now that you said that, I do have a question. Maybe we can go a couple minutes over about the justice piece, because what does that actually mean in your context when justice may not even be served in a way?
Yeah. So that's what I'm writing about. That's what I was working on today. So I'll give you my current understanding, and if you wait patiently for a year, you'll be able to get the final formulation. Although I'll probably do what I've done before, which is open the draft to comment by. I'll post on LinkedIn when it's ready. This has been quite a fun process in my previous books. Maybe some of you participated, maybe Peter. I can't remember all the names. Over 300 people participated. So what I mean by justice is a way of relating that that enables everybody to contribute and connect, to exercise their power and their love. And what I'm saying is that the solution to the problem of fragmentation, if I can try to make it very brief, is justice. If we don't have justice, we will not be able to come together we will not be able to live together well. We will live together the way we're living together, in unjust circumstances, with violence and disconnection. So that justice, as I'm formulating it, is the requirement, whether it's in a family, an organization, a nation, globally. That's what my current book is about, and the working title as of today, it'll probably change 30 more times, is The Justice Solution. Because it's about, and the working subtitle is How to Live Together Well in a World That's Falling Apart Badly. So that's what I'm trying to understand. I'm not quite there yet.
Okay. No, but that was very helpful. Thank you. And I think that was a beautiful closing statement for this conversation today. Adam, thank you so much for making the time to be here. I think you've given everybody a lot of food for thought. I'm certainly sitting with the potentiality, the kintsugi, the justice. And I would invite everybody for one, just to connect with the gallery view for a moment and look at all of the people who came here today, and just, create awareness that we're in this together. And if you want to unmute yourselves, and then Adam, we have this tiny ritual at Conscious You where we try to find the fingertips of another person in a tile next to us to create, a sense of connection in this digital world. Thank you, everybody, for being here and spending some time in this evening with you. Have a wonderful evening or day wherever you are in the world. Bye.
Bye
Let's know.
bye.
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 Thank you, Adam. Thank you.
Dankeschön.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Adam.
Dankeschön. Tschüss.
Thanks, Nadia.
Okay.
Nadia,
You, Nadia.
Okay, bis später.
Bye. Adam, thank you so much. That was great.
Thank you.
You really added something to the heart space, actually. I mean, I know you're a very intellectual thinker, but it really touched me in the heart somehow, what you shared.
Okay. Thank you. It was a pleasure, and also interesting for me. So you're going to write something now,
So
or you're
yeah,
just
what will
going to post
happen
the video?
is no. What will happen is the following. I'll make a transcript of the session. Then the interview will get edited into, you know, shorter form for you know, well,
Yeah.
for print, for being mailed out. But it always includes a link to the original conversation. So if people want to watch the full interview, they
Oh,
can.
great.
And when we begin to publish it, and yours will probably come out in May, I think, then we will also post snippets from the interview with you, and you know, you will always be tagged, so you will see when they go out, and we will link to your book and or yeah, anything that you want us to link to.
Yes, sorry, I just want to make a note here. So I'll do that right now, which is sorry, yes, I'll send you the link, but also to the German edition.
Yes, that would be great. If you could send those by email, that would be fantastic. Then
Yes, I'll do that tomorrow morning because it's quite late here.
Yeah.
Yes, so I look forward to seeing what you write, and I'm very excited about the German edition, both because it's the first and also because I like the German language very much, even though my German partner told me it's a terrible title. But anyhow, publishers have their own ideas about the translation of the title, and anyhow, that's a whole other thing. So if there's opportunities to present the work in Germany, I'm open to that.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. I mean, my audience is more, you know, mixed, like a hodgepodge audience with, you know, strong tendency towards Dinglish and whatever, you know, with a lot of Spanish-speaking people and French-speaking people. So it's we tend to end up in
I
English,
just mentioned it. Yeah.
But we will definitely link it in the German, because we have a German edition of the newsletter and an English edition of the newsletter.
Good. So I'm interested in both. So if you can tag me in both, then I'll also publicize it in my German network.
Okay, amazing. We'll do that. And Adam, just to know, do you want to see the edited transcript before we publish it, or are you good to go? Okay, just checking.
No.
Adam, thank you so much. This was such a joy, and have a wonderful evening.
Okay, danke schön.
Bye.
Tschüss.
Tschüss.